Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the UFS Defiance. Through the massive window, he could see hundreds of ships floating in space. Human ships, alien ships, all working together. They had been fighting side by side for 50 years against a terrible enemy called the Void Swarm. The Void Swarm was not like other alien races. They did not want to talk or make deals, they only wanted to eat. They consumed entire planets, leaving nothing behind but empty space. Every living thing became food for them. For half a century, 4 races had stood together against this threat. Jake trusted his alien friends completely. The Vorthak were made of living crystal and shot beams of pure energy. The Zephyrians looked like giant insects with sharp claws and fast reflexes. The Hydrians lived in water and could fight in the deep oceans of many worlds. Together with humans, they formed the Galaxy Defense Alliance. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at her station, watching the navigation screens. She had served with Jake for 10 years. Behind her, Sergeant Bob Jenkins checked his weapons one more time. His Marines were ready for battle. Down in the engine room, Chief Engineer Lisa Brooks made sure their quantum drive was running perfectly. Today was supposed to be the final battle. The Void Swarm had gathered all their forces near Kepler Station, a human outpost on the edge of known space. If they could defeat the swarm here, the galaxy would finally be safe. Every ship in the Alliance was here for this fight. Admiral Kate Sullivan commanded the human fleet from her flagship, the UFS Liberty. She had fought the Void Swarm longer than anyone. Her voice came over the communication system, calm and strong. All ships, prepare for attack pattern 7. Today we end this war. Jake felt proud to serve under Admiral Sullivan. She had saved countless human colonies from the swarm. The alien commanders respected her too. General Zax of the Zephyrians had called her the greatest warrior he had ever known. The battle began at dawn, ship time. The Void Swarm came at them like a black wave. Their ships were not built, they were grown. Living metal that could heal itself and weapons that fired pure hunger. The Alliance fleet met them head-on. Jake watched the Vorthak ships fire their crystal cannons. Beautiful beams of light cut through space, hitting swarm vessels and making them explode in bursts of green fire. The Zephyrian bio-missiles flew like living creatures, chasing down enemy ships and destroying them from inside. The Hydrian fleet used plasma torpedoes that burned hotter than stars. Human ships fired their railguns and launched nuclear missiles. For 3 hours, the battle raged across space. Ships on both sides were destroyed, but slowly the Alliance was winning, Amy called out from her station. Captain, the swarm is falling back. We have them running. Bob Jenkins grinned from his position. About time. My Marines are getting bored up here, Jake allowed himself to smile. After 50 years of war, they were finally winning. He opened a channel to Admiral Sullivan's ship. Admiral, this is Morrison. Shall we pursue the retreating swarm ships? But Admiral Sullivan did not answer. Instead, Jake heard something that made his blood turn cold. The sound of explosions. Not from swarm weapons, but from Alliance guns on his main screen. Jake watched in horror as the UFS Liberty burst into flames. But the weapons hitting it were not from the Void Swarm. They were crystal cannons from Vorthak ships, bio-missiles from Zephyrian vessels, plasma torpedoes from Hydrian cruisers. Amy turned around, her face white with shock. Captain, all human ships are under attack. The aliens are firing on us. Double quotes. Jake could not believe what he was seeing. Across the battlefield, every alien ship had turned its weapons on their human allies. The Vorthak, who had shared their crystal technology with humans, the Zephyrians, who had trained human Marines in combat, the Hydrians, who had given humans the secrets of underwater warfare. They were all attacking human ships with deadly precision. The communication channels filled with screams and confused shouts from human captains. Captain Tony Garcia of the UFS Vengeance was calling for help as 3 Zephyrian ships surrounded him. Captain Kelly Moore of the UFS Courage reported that Hydrian torpedoes had destroyed her engine room. Jake grabbed his communication device. All alien vessels, cease fire immediately. What are you doing? The answer came from General Zax himself. the Zephyrian Commander Jake had considered a friend. His insect voice was cold and emotionless. "We do what we must for survival, human. Your species has served its purpose." Lisa Brooks ran onto the bridge, her face covered in sweat and fear. "Captain, we have to get out of here now." 3 Vorthek. "Ships are moving to attack us." Jake looked at his crew. These people trusted him to keep them alive. Around them, the human fleet was being destroyed by the very allies they had died to protect. Admiral Sullivan's ship was gone. Captain Garcia's vessel exploded as Jake watched. Hundreds of human ships were burning in space. "Amy, get us out of here. Maximum speed." "Where do we go, Captain?" Jake stared at the battle raging around them. The void swarm had stopped retreating. They were watching the aliens destroy the human fleet. Some swarm ships were even moving away, as if they knew this was going to happen. "Home," Jake said. "We go home and warn Earth." The Defiance turned away from the battle and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, the last human ships in the Outer Rim were being destroyed by their former friends. Jake realized that this had been planned. The aliens had made a deal. With the Void Swarm, they would eliminate humanity, and in return, their own worlds would be spared. As they traveled through space toward Earth, Jake made a promise to himself and his crew. Humanity would survive this betrayal. And someday, somehow, they would make the aliens pay for what they had done here today. Earth's sky was filled with burning ships. The few human vessels that had escaped the betrayal at Kepler Station limped home, carrying terrible news. Jake Morrison's ship, the Defiance, was among the first to reach Earth's orbit. What he saw there made his heart sink even deeper. More alien ships waited in Earth's solar system, not attacking but watching. They had surrounded every human world like vultures waiting for death. The message was clear: humanity was trapped. President Helen Davis called an emergency meeting of the Terran Federation Council. Jake found himself in a room with the most powerful people in human space, but they all looked defeated. The betrayal had destroyed more than ships. It had broken their spirit. "How many ships do we have left?" President Davis asked Commander. Steve Parker, who had been Jake's friend at the military academy, stood up slowly. His left arm was in a cast from the battle. 187 combat vessels, Madam President. We lost over 3,000 ships at Kepler Station." The room fell silent. 3,000 ships meant 3 million crew members. 3 million humans who had died because they trusted their alien allies. An aide rushed into the room carrying a message tablet. President Davis read it and her face turned pale. "The aliens are demanding we evacuate all human colonies within 30 days. We must retreat beyond the galactic rim or face complete destruction." Jake slammed his fist on the table. "We cannot just run away." "This is our galaxy too? With what ships, Captain Morrison?" President Davis asked sadly. "They have thousands of vessels. We have less than 200. Dr. Rachel Green, Earth's top scientist, spoke from her chair near the window. She had been strangely quiet during the meeting. "Perhaps running away is exactly what we should do." Everyone turned to look at her. Jake frowned. "Doctor, are you suggesting we abandon our colonies?" Dr. Rachel Green smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "I am suggesting we retreat, yes, but not forever. There are things we can learn from this defeat, things we can build while we are gone." She stood up and walked to the holographic display in the center of the room. With a few touches, she brought up images of void swarm creatures that had been captured over the years. "We have been studying their biology for decades, their ability to adapt, to consume and transform. What if we could use that knowledge?" Jake did not understand what she meant, but something in her voice made him listen. Carefully, "The aliens betrayed us because they think we are weak," Dr. Green continued. "They think humans are soft, emotional creatures who cannot survive without friends. They are about to learn how wrong they are." Over the next month, the largest evacuation in human history began. Commander Steve Parker coordinated the movement of billions of people from hundreds of colonies. Ships that had been used for trade and exploration were converted to carry refugees. Jake, found himself commanding a group of escort vessels, protecting the slow-moving evacuation ships from alien attacks. The aliens did not try to stop the evacuation. They wanted humans gone, not dead. At least, not yet. Amy Carter, now promoted to commander, piloted one of the evacuation ships. Her vessel carried 50,000 colonists from New Texas, a farming world that had fed dozens of human colonies. The colonists were angry and scared, but they were alive. Bob Jenkins had taken command of the Marine unit spread across the evacuation fleet. His job was to keep order and prepare for whatever came next. He spent his time training civilian volunteers in basic combat skills. Many of the refugees wanted to learn how to fight. Lisa Brooks worked with Dr. Rachel Green on special projects that Jake did not fully understand. They were modifying ship engines and weapons using technology salvaged from destroyed alien vessels. Brooks seemed excited about their work, which worried Jake. Lisa only got excited about very dangerous things. As the human fleet moved beyond the edge of the galaxy, strange things began to happen. Ships that should have been slow started moving faster. Weapons that should have been weak began hitting harder. The refugees who had seemed broken by the evacuation started looking angry instead of scared. Dr. Ben Foster, who worked with Dr. Green, explained some of what they were doing. "We are not just retreating, Captain Morrison. We are evolving. The aliens made a mistake when they betrayed us. They showed us what we really are." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Every other species in the galaxy gives up when they are defeated. Humans do not give up. We get angry. We get creative. We become something our enemies cannot understand or defeat." The last human ship left the galaxy on a Tuesday. Jake remembered the day clearly because it was Amy's birthday. She should have been celebrating on New Texas with her family. Instead, she was piloting a refugee ship into the dark void between galaxies. But as they traveled into the darkness, something unexpected happened back in the galaxy they had left behind. The Void Swarm, which had seemed to be working with the aliens, suddenly attacked them. The deal the aliens had made was worthless. The Swarm had never intended to keep their promise. Intercepted alien communications reached the human fleet. The Vorthak homeworld was under attack. Zephyrian colonies were being consumed. The Hydrians were calling for help from anyone who would listen. Some humans wanted to go back and help their former allies. Jake was not one of them. When the alien messages asked for assistance, he sent a simple reply: "You chose your side. Now live with it." But Dr. Rachel Green had a different idea. "Let them fight the swarm," she said during a meeting of the human command staff. "Let them weaken each other. While they are busy dying, we will become something they never expected." She activated a holographic display showing the research they had been doing during the evacuation. What Jake saw made him understand why Lisa Brooks had been so excited. "We are not just hiding in the dark," Dr. Green said. "We are preparing. And when we return to the galaxy, we will not be the same species that left it." The display showed ships that could phase in and out of normal space, weapons that could crack planets, soldiers who had been modified to survive in conditions that would kill normal humans. Jake looked around the room at his fellow humans. Amy Carter had a new scar across her face from a training accident, but her eyes burned with determination. Bob Jenkins had been working with volunteers who wanted to become something more than human. Lisa Brooks had been building weapons that defied the laws of physics as they knew them. They were no longer the trusting allies who had been betrayed at Kepler Station. The aliens had wanted humanity to disappear into the darkness beyond the galaxy. They were about to discover that darkness was where humans became truly dangerous. 20-5 years, Jake thought to himself. Give us 25 years in the dark and we will show you what betrayal really costs. 25 years had passed since humanity fled into the darkness beyond the galaxy. What had once been a collection of refugee ships had become something else entirely. The humans who now lived in the void between stars were no longer the same. Species that had trusted their alien allies, General Amy Carter stood in the command center of her flagship, watching thousands of ships move through space like a school of predatory fish. These were not the clean white vessels of the old Terran Federation. They were black as the void itself, covered in armor that seemed to absorb light. Amy had changed too. The scared navigation officer from the Defiance was gone. In her place was a warrior who had spent 25 years preparing for revenge. Her right eye had been replaced with a mechanical device that let her see through space and time. Scars covered her arms from the modifications that let her interface directly with her ships. "General, we have confirmed intelligence from the Zephyrian worlds," reported Colonel Danny Wright, her intelligence officer. "The swarm consumed their last major colony 3 days ago. Total population loss, 4 billion. Amy felt no pity for the Zephyrians. They had chosen to betray humanity at Kepler Station. Now they were paying the price for that choice. "What about the Vorthek?" she asked. "The crystal cities are going dark one by one. The swarm has learned to corrupt their energy matrix from within. We estimate they have maybe 6 months before complete extinction," Amy nodded. The Vorthak had been the first to fire on human ships during the betrayal. It seemed fitting that they would be among the first to die. Dr. Rachel Green, now called the Architect by most humans, entered the command center. At 70 years old, she looked younger than she had during the evacuation. The life-extending treatment she had developed from Void Swarm biology had stopped her aging completely. "The Ghost Corps volunteers are ready for their final transformation," Dr. Green announced. "Lisa has completed the modifications to our phase drive systems. We can begin field testing tomorrow." Amy turned to look at the architect. "How many volunteers do we have?" 50,000, including Bob Jenkins. Amy was not surprised. Bob had been asking to join the Ghost Corps program since its creation. He wanted to be in the first wave when they returned to the galaxy. The Ghost Corps was Dr. Green's most ambitious project. Human volunteers underwent procedures that changed their basic biology. They could survive in vacuum, interface directly with ship computers, and move faster than any alien warrior. But the process changed them in ways that could not be undone. Colonel Lisa Brooks had volunteered for the program 5 years ago. When Amy looked at her now, she sometimes had trouble remembering the cheerful engineer from the Defiance. Lisa's skin had a metallic sheen and her eyes glowed with inner light. She could control ship systems with her thoughts and repair damage by touching broken components. "The new ships are ready for combat testing," Lisa reported. "We have integrated Void Swarm biotechnology with human engineering. The result is beyond what we originally planned." Amy followed Lisa to the observation deck. Outside, she could see the shadow fleet that humanity had built during their exile. Ships that phased in and out of normal space, becoming solid only when they wanted to fire their weapons. Vessels that could travel faster than light, without using hyperspace lanes. But the most impressive sight was the living ships. Dr. Green had learned to grow vessels using modified Void Swarm genetics. These ships could heal themselves, adapt to new weapons, and think independently. They were loyal to humans, but they were not entirely human technology. "Show me the weapons test," Amy ordered. Lisa activated a holographic display. On the screen, Amy watched one of their new ships fire at an asteroid. The weapon beam passed through normal space and struck the asteroid in the past, before the shot was fired. The rock exploded moments before the gun discharged. "Temporal displacement weapons," Lisa explained. "We fire the shot after we know it hit the target." Amy stared at the display. "That should be impossible." "Many things should be impossible," Dr. Green said, joining them at the observation deck. "But we learn not to think like humans anymore. We learn to think like predators." Commander Bob Jenkins arrived for the meeting, but Amy barely recognized him. The Ghost Corps modifications had changed him completely. His skin was pale as starlight, and his movements were too fast for normal human eyes to follow. When he spoke, his voice had an electronic quality. "The Hydrians sent another message asking for help," Bob reported. "They are offering to share their deep ocean technology if we will fight the swarm for them." Amy laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. "What did you tell them?" "I sent them recordings from Kepler Station. I wanted them to remember what they did to Admiral Sullivan and her crew. The Hydrians had been the last to join the betrayal, but they had been thorough. Their plasma torpedoes had destroyed more human ships than any other weapon. Amy had no interest in helping them now. Dr. Ben Foster, who had worked on psychological warfare during the exile, joined the group. Like everyone else, he had been changed by 25 years in the void. His modifications were mental rather than physical, allowing him to understand and manipulate alien thought patterns. The remaining alien populations are showing signs of psychological breakdown, Dr. Foster reported. They cannot understand why the swarm continues to attack them after they eliminated humanity. Because the swarm was never going to honor any deal, Amy said. They used the aliens to remove their most dangerous enemy, then continued their original plan of consuming everything. Dr. Foster nodded. The aliens are beginning to realize this. Some Vortex survivors have asked if we would consider accepting their surrender. Amy felt a cold satisfaction at those words. The proud crystalline beings who had called humans weak were now begging for mercy from the species they had tried to eliminate. "What do you recommend?" Amy asked. "Let them suffer a while longer. Fear will make them more compliant when we finally return." Through the observation deck windows, Amy could see human children playing in the corridors of the massive ships. These children had been born in the void. They had never seen a planet or breathed natural air. They had grown up hearing stories of the betrayal and learning to hate the aliens who had killed their grandparents. These children could survive in vacuum without suits. They could interface with ship systems before they learned to walk. They were faster, stronger, and smarter than any human in history. When they returned to the galaxy, they would be leading the assault forces. "How long before we are ready?" Amy asked Dr. Green. "The fleet modifications will be complete in 6 months. We have enough ships to retake the entire galaxy and enough weapons to destroy any resistance." Amy nodded. 25 years of preparation were almost over. The aliens who had betrayed humanity were about to learn what humans became when they were pushed beyond their limits. "Begin the final preparations," Amy ordered. "Send word to all ships. We return to the galaxy in 1 year." As the meeting ended, and her officers left to prepare their forces, Amy remained at the observation deck. Somewhere in the galaxy they had left behind, alien civilizations were dying. The void swarm was consuming worlds, and the survivors were learning what it meant to face extinction alone, but they would not be alone much longer. Humanity was coming home, and they were bringing gifts, weapons that defied physics, soldiers who had transcended biology, and a hunger for revenge that had been growing for 25 years in the darkness between stars. The human fleet emerged from the void like death itself, returning to claim what was owed. 5,000 ships phased into normal space at the edge of the galaxy. But these were not the vessels that had fled 25 years ago. They moved wrong, existed wrong, and carried weapons that made reality bend around them. Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new flagship, also called the Defiance, but bearing no resemblance to the ship he had once commanded. This vessel was grown rather than built, its living metal hull breathing slowly as it moved through space. Jake himself had changed too. Ghost Core's modifications had made him something between human and machine, able to think at computer speeds and react faster than light itself. "All ships report ready for combat operations," announced Captain Tony Garcia from his position at the tactical station. Tony had lost his original ship at Kepler Station, and the hatred in his modified eyes burned like small stars through the bridge windows. Jake could see the galaxy spread out before them. But it was not the galaxy they had left. Vast sections of space were empty, consumed by the void swarm. Dead worlds drifted in the darkness, picked clean of all life. The aliens who had betrayed humanity were getting exactly what they deserved. Intelligence. Report. Jake ordered. Commander Danny Wright activated the holographic display. Maps showed the current state of galactic civilization, and it was worse than even the humans had hoped. The Vorthek are down to 12 crystal cities, all heavily damaged. The Zephyrians have maybe 50 hive worlds left, and most of those are under attack. The Hydrians have retreated to their deepest ocean worlds, but the swarm is learning how to drain seas. Jake felt a cold satisfaction at the numbers. 3 proud species that had commanded thousands of worlds were now reduced to scattered survivors hiding in the corners of space. What about the void swarm itself? Jake asked. They control 60% of the galaxy now, but they are showing signs of overextension. Our analysis suggests they are having trouble managing such a large territory. They expected more resistance from the aliens. Jake smiled, but his modified face made the expression look predatory. They got used to fighting opponents who surrender. When things get difficult, they are about to remember what real resistance looks like. Admiral Kelly Moore's voice came over the communication system from her Deep Strike fleet. Admiral Morrison, my scouts report heavy swarm activity in the former Zephyrian industrial sector. Recommend we start there. Agreed. Begin Phase 1 operations. The human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each one targeting a different area of the galaxy. But they were not trying to reclaim territory or save alien civilians. They were hunting, and their prey was everything that had betrayed humanity. Jake took his battle group to the Zephyrian world of Nest Prime, once the heart of their military production. As they approached the planet, they found exactly what they expected: a void swarm feeding cluster consuming the last Zephyrian defenders. Shall we assist the Zephyrians, Admiral? Asked Captain Garcia. No, let us watch them die first. I want to see how the great insect warriors handle extinction. On the main screen, Jake watched Zephyrian fighters desperately trying to defend their hive cities from swarm bioships. The insect warriors, who had once called humans weak, were being overwhelmed by opponents they could not understand or negotiate with. A communication signal reached the Defiance from the surface. A Zephyrian commander was begging for help from any ships in the area. Jake recognized the voice, General Zax, the same commander who had personally fired on human ships during the betrayal. General Zax, this is Admiral Morrison of the human fleet, Jake responded. The silence that followed was long and heavy. When General Zax finally spoke, his voice was filled with something Jake had never heard from a Zephyrian before: fear. Admiral Morrison, I thought all humans were dead. We need your help. The swarm will consume everything if we do not work together. Work together? Jake laughed. Like we worked together at Kepler Station? Like we worked together when you fired bio-missiles into our evacuation ships? That was different. We had no choice. The swarm would have killed us all. And now they are killing you anyway. How interesting. Jake cut the communication and turned to his weapons officer. Target the Zephyrian cities first? I want General Zax to watch his people die before we deal with the swarm. The Defiance opened fire with weapons that existed partially outside normal time. The shots struck Zephyrian hive cities moments before they were fired, causing explosions that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Buildings collapsed inward on themselves, and Zephyrian warriors died without understanding what had killed them. General Zax's final transmission was a scream of rage and confusion. Jake listened to it with satisfaction before ordering his fleet to engage the Void Swarm forces. The swarm creatures had evolved to fight conventional weapons, but human technology had moved far beyond conventional. Phase cannons struck from dimensions the swarm could not detect. Bioweapons turned the swarm's own adaptive abilities against them. Temporal bombs exploded in the past, killing swarm ships before they arrived in the battle. Within 6 hours, Nest Prime was cleansed of all life, Zephyrian and swarm alike. Jake marked the world for human colonization and moved on to the next target. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy, as human battle groups struck at both their former allies and their old enemies. Admiral Moore's aquatic warfare specialist drained entire Hydrian ocean worlds, leaving the survivors gasping on dry land before finishing them with bioweapons that liquefied their breathing organs. Captain Sarah Bell led the assault on Vorthak crystal cities, using modified swarm technology to corrupt their energy matrices from within. The crystalline beings discovered that their pure energy forms could be infected like any biological organism. But the most systematic destruction was carried out by Colonel Lisa Brooks and her engineering corps. They did not just destroy alien worlds, they converted them. Using a combination of human technology and modified swarm biology, they transformed planets into hostile environments that actively hunted any non-human life, former Zephyrian worlds, became vast hunting grounds where the planet itself pursued and consumed any insect life. Vorthok crystal cities were converted into power sources for human weapons. Hydrian ocean worlds became manufacturing centers, where bioships were grown in the depths. The few alien survivors who managed to escape the initial attacks found themselves facing something they had never expected: mercy. But it was not the kind of mercy they wanted. Human forces rounded up Vorthok, Zephyrian, and Hydrian survivors and transported them to special facilities. These aliens were not killed. Instead, they were kept as living reminders of what happened to species that betrayed humanity. Former Zephyrian warriors worked in human factories, their warrior instincts suppressed by neural implants. Vorthok nobles became energy batteries, their crystalline bodies used to power human weapons. Hydrian deep-sea experts maintained the ocean worlds, but under constant human supervision. Every alien survivor was required to learn the names of the human ships destroyed at Kepler Station. They had to memorize the names of Admiral Kate Sullivan and her crew. They were forced to acknowledge their guilt and humanity's mercy in allowing them to live. Jake received regular reports from across the galaxy as the conquest continued. The Void Swarm was being systematically exterminated using their own biological weapons turned against them. The aliens who had betrayed humanity were learning what it meant to serve as slaves in their own former territories, but perhaps the most significant development was the establishment of the Watcher program. Dr. Rachel Green had succeeded in completely reprogramming captured Void Swarm creatures, turning them into loyal guardians of human space. These living ships patrolled the galaxy's borders, ensuring that no new alien civilizations could rise to threaten human dominance. As Jake stood on his bridge, watching human ships convert another former alien world into a human stronghold, he reflected on how much had changed since the betrayal. Humanity had been exiled from the galaxy as refugees. They were returning as conquerors who would never again trust anyone but themselves. The aliens had made a simple mistake. They had assumed that betraying humanity would eliminate the threat humans represented. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous, a species that had learned to survive without allies, to fight without mercy, and to win without compromise. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, and it would remain that way forever. 5 years had passed since humanity returned to the galaxy, and the transformation was complete. What had once been a collection of diverse alien civilizations was now the human galactic empire, ruled from a mobile throne world that drifted through the core systems like a predator marking its territory. Emperor Jake Morrison sat in his command chamber aboard the mobile capital, watching reports from across his domain. He no longer looked entirely human. Ghost Core's modifications had changed him into something beyond mortal limitations. His eyes glowed with inner light, his thoughts moved at quantum speeds, and his body could survive in the vacuum of space. The chamber itself defied conventional understanding of architecture. Walls that existed in multiple dimensions showed him every corner of the galaxy simultaneously. He could see human colonies thriving on worlds that had once belonged to aliens. He could watch the surviving aliens working in their assigned roles. As servants of humanity, General Amy Carter entered the chamber, her footsteps silent on floors that responded to her presence. She had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense, responsible for ensuring that no threat to humanity ever emerged again. "Your Majesty, the quarterly compliance reports from the alien populations," Amy said, offering him a data tablet. Jake reviewed the numbers with satisfaction. The surviving Vorthok had exceeded their crystal mining quotas by 12%. Zephyrian agricultural supervisors had increased food production on their assigned worlds by 20%. The Hydrians were maintaining the ocean worlds exactly as ordered. "Any signs of resistance?" Jake asked. "None, Your Majesty. The conditioning programs have been completely successful. The aliens seemed to have accepted their new roles in society. Jake was not surprised. Dr. Rachel Green, now known throughout the galaxy as the Architect, had designed the alien conditioning programs using advanced psychology and modified void swarm neural parasites. The surviving aliens genuinely believed that serving humanity was their natural purpose. What about new contacts? Any signs of other alien civilizations trying to enter our territory? Amy's modified face showed something that might have been amusement. The Watchers report that 3 different species have attempted to establish contact with us in the past month. All 3 turned back immediately after encountering our border patrols. The Watchers were perhaps the most terrifying aspect of humanity's new empire. Dr. Green had succeeded in completely reprogramming captured void swarm creatures, turning them into perfect guardians. These living ships patrolled the galaxy's edges, and any alien species that encountered them quickly decided that exploring in other directions would be safer. Admiral Kelly Moore's image appeared on the communication screen. She was reporting from the deep ocean worlds where human children were being raised in underwater cities maintained by Hydrian servants. Your Majesty, the new generation is developing exactly as predicted. The children born in our ocean cities can breathe water as easily as air. They can communicate with sea life and navigate underwater in complete darkness. Jake nodded approvingly. Human children were being raised in environments across the galaxy, adapting to conditions that would have killed their ancestors. Desert worlds, gas giants, crystal caves, everywhere humans settled, they changed to match their surroundings while remaining fundamentally human. Dr. Ben Foster, now serving as Minister of Alien Affairs, joined the meeting via hologram from his headquarters on former Zephyrion Prime. His job was to oversee the psychological welfare of the alien populations and ensure their continued loyalty. The anniversary approaches, Your Majesty, Dr. Foster reminded him. Shall we proceed with the traditional ceremonies? Of course. It is important that the aliens remember. Every year on the anniversary of the betrayal at Kepler Station, the Empire held remembrance ceremonies. Alien populations were required to participate, reciting the names of human ships that had been destroyed and acknowledging their species. Guilt. The ceremonies served both as memorial and warning. Dr. Rachel Green appeared in the chamber, her form flickering slightly as she transmitted from multiple locations simultaneously. The Architect had transcended physical limitations, existing as pure consciousness distributed across the galaxy's quantum networks. The evolution projects are proceeding ahead of schedule, she reported. We now have humans who can survive in 11 different stellar environments. The genetic modifications are stable and hereditary. Jake was pleased. Humanity was not just conquering the galaxy, they were adapting to own it completely. Soon there would be human subspecies perfectly suited for every possible environment. What about the consciousness transfer project? Jake asked. We have achieved 97% success rate in uploading human minds to quantum matrices. Death is becoming optional for our species. The implications were staggering. Humanity was becoming truly immortal, able to back up their consciousness and transfer between bodies as needed. They would outlast any alien species that might threaten them in the future. Captain Tony Garcia, now serving as Minister of Galactic Justice, entered the chamber carrying a report that made Jake smile. Tony's job was to ensure that the lessons of the betrayal were never forgotten and that justice was maintained throughout the Empire. Your Majesty, we have completed the educational programs for this year's human children. Every child born in the Empire now learns the complete history of the betrayal. They understand why we can never trust alien species again. This was crucial to Jake's vision for humanity's future. The children growing up in the Empire had never known a time when humans trusted aliens. To them, alien servitude was the natural order of things. They would never make the mistakes that had led to Kepler Station. Show me the latest reports from the border worlds, Jake ordered. The chamber walls shifted to display the edge of human space. Massive watcher creatures patrolled. The Boundaries, their bioships grown from modified void swarm genetics. These guardians were larger than most space stations, capable of consuming entire fleets if threatened, but the most impressive sight was the construction projects. Human engineering teams were building structures that defied conventional physics. Space stations that existed in multiple dimensions, weapon platforms that could fire through time itself, and manufacturing centers that could create matter from pure energy. Colonel Lisa Brooks appeared via hologram from the primary shipyards. In the former Vorthak Core Systems, she had been promoted to Chief of Advanced Technologies, responsible for pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Your Majesty, the new generation of ships is ready for testing. We have successfully integrated consciousness transfer technology. With our vessels, our ships can now think, feel, and make independent decisions while remaining completely loyal to humanity. Jake was fascinated by this development. Ships that were truly alive but bound to human service by their very nature. These vessels would be perfect for exploring beyond the galaxy, carrying human consciousness to other star systems. What about the other projects? Jake asked. The planetary engineering teams have completed work on 50 former alien worlds. We can now transform any planet into an ideal human environment within 6 months. We have also perfected the technique for creating artificial solar systems. The scope of human achievement was staggering. In just 5 years since their return, they had surpassed everything the aliens had accomplished in thousands of years of civilization. Commander Bob Jenkins, now enhanced beyond recognition by Ghost Core's modifications, materialized in the chamber. He served as commander of the Special Operations Division, handling threats that required more subtle approaches than conventional military force. Your Majesty, our deep space scouts have made contact with a new alien confederation approximately 50,000 light-years from our borders. They appear to be planning some kind of alliance against us. Jake was not concerned. How many species are involved? Approximately 200 different alien races, Your Majesty. They seem to think that by working together, they can present a credible threat to our empire. Jake laughed, and the sound echoed strangely in the multidimensional chamber. 200 species working together? They still do not understand what humanity has become. Amy Carter stepped forward. Shall I prepare the fleet for expansion operations? Your Majesty, not yet. Let them organize their alliance. Let them spend years planning and preparing. When they finally work up the courage to approach our borders, the Watchers will give them a demonstration of what happens to species that threaten humanity. The truth was that Jake looked forward to encountering new alien species. Each contact provided opportunities to test new weapons, refine psychological warfare techniques, and add new servants to the Empire. The 200 species forming their alliance had no idea what they were planning to face. Dr. Foster interrupted with an important announcement. Your Majesty, we are receiving surrender offers from 3 of the species in the new alien confederation. Apparently, they have heard stories about what happened to the Vorthak, Zephyrians, and Hydrians. What are they offering? Complete submission to human authority in exchange for being allowed to continue existing. They are willing to relocate to worlds we designate and accept whatever roles we assign them. Jake considered this offer carefully. It showed that word of humanity's transformation was spreading beyond the G.